Today I'll be speaking about the Lucchese Captains during my time. For those unfamiliar, in a family, the captains oversee crews, which in essence represent small families and jointly make up a larger family. These crews typically have one member who's designated as an acting captain. And there's no set number of members that a crew can have, as I've mentioned in the past. Dom Trusello, a Lucchese captain, told me that he had about 30 guys in his crew at one time, which would be considered a very large crew. Each member of the crew has associates who are basically at the crew's disposal. Those associates are hopeful that one day they could become inducted members of the family. The question if crews get along is one I've been asked a lot. And for the most part, they do. That is, putting aside the historical animosity between the Lucchese's Brooklyn and Bronx crews. There were times that captains didn't get along, and that overflowed a little between members. There were two places in particular that all the crews would mingle, and that would be at the Lucchese Social Club up in the Bronx and at wakes. Sometimes after a wake, the crews would all go their separate ways to go eat, especially when we had to attend an afternoon and night session. There were also some wakes when an entire crew wouldn't attend, but would send one or two guys to come and represent their crew. Just as in anything else, the characteristics and personalities of the captains varied. The majority of the captains were doing well and considered wealthy, and then there were others who were extremely wealthy. And it's always a plus for a crew whose captain is swimming in money. Because when a captain's independently wealthy, they're not looking to squeeze every nickel out of what their crew earns. Mentioning Dom Trusello once again, I was speaking with him one year about Christmas envelopes, and he told me that most years he wouldn't take any money from his guys, and that he would put the money in an envelope that would go to the administration. It was his own money, which demonstrated he was a very different type of captain than Big John, who would salivate at Christmas time. So I guess that's a good segue into Big John. He was the captain of the Brooklyn faction who operated out of Staten Island. To best sum John up is the fact that he wouldn't name an official acting captain like all the other captains did. We were the only crew that had semi-acting captains, more than one, because John was insecure that someone might replace him. He wasn't considered an extremely wealthy captain. He did well for himself, but was extremely greedy, and would complain every Christmas about guys not putting enough money in their envelopes. In my opinion, and from what I've seen, Big John was the least respected captain in the family, and definitely the most inexperienced. A crew is as strong as their leader, so that didn't say much for the Brooklyn faction. Big John's nemesis was without question Joe Cafe, and he was the captain of a Long Island crew. And one of the reasons he hated Cafe was jealousy, because Cafe was wealthy. Another reason was because Joe DiNapoli, the family's consigliere at the time, and Big John's rabbi, also disliked Cafe. In fact, he despised him. Cafe didn't have a big crew, a few guys, one who happened to be John's brother Spanky. Cafe was always around whoever was the acting boss. He was up Maddie's ass, and when Mikey took the position, he was up his as well. And I think that was one of the reasons why Joe DiNapoli didn't like him. Cafe could be a pain in the ass because he was a stickler for the rules, but the petty rules, like being clean-shaved, etc. He was also a person that would put you in a trick bag if you weren't on your toes. But for some reason, I did get along with him. Part of my reasoning is I knew it irked Big John. When Cafe told him he wanted me to come over to his crew, Big John seen red and was pissed. Carmine Avellino, another Long Island captain, was extremely wealthy. And another person a lot of guys didn't get along with. For example, both Patty Delarosa and Mikey DeSantis were in Carmine's crew at different times, and both didn't get along with him. I like Carmine and his brother Sal. Sal's son Michael was Carmine's acting captain. The Avellinos have a lot of history with the Lucchese family. Carmine also was a captain who remained very close to the family's administration. And as I've mentioned in the past, when it came to the Avellinos' money, most decisions went their way. Another Long Island crew was headed by Captain Paolo Loduca, also in the extremely wealthy category. Paolo kept big money members around him like Thomas D'Ambrosio, and he had a history with the mafia in Sicily, and was considered the Lucchese's liaison with the Gambino Sicilian faction. Besides one run-in I had with him, he was someone I also got along with. The Bronx Captains, I really didn't know too much about, like Sally Bo DeSimone, the father of Andrew DeSimone. I never met him, but knew he was a captain. Stevie Crea Jr., son of the family's underboss at the time, also had a Bronx crew. I met a few guys in his crew, and he seemed like a nice guy. Then there was Anthony Blue Santarelli, another Bronx captain, whose son Freddie Boy was his acting captain, obviously grooming him to take his place. I have to admit, besides Big John, Anthony Blue was one of the sneakiest captains, and Big John's brother Bubsy was in his crew. While in a conversation with Anthony Blue, you could read the insincerity on his face. Again, that's where the Brooklyn Bronx animosity takes place. Dom Trusello, as I mentioned before, was a Manhattan captain of the Prince Street crew, and Dom's been around for a long time. I always enjoyed the conversations we had. He told me one day that he came home to his house when he lived in New Jersey and walked over to the pond and noticed all the fish were floating on top of the water. He said, I always believed the agents threw poison in my pond and killed my fish. He also told me that he knew acting boss Joe DeFede was going to cooperate. He was in prison with him in the early 2000s. Please remember to like this video if you haven't already, as it helps out with YouTube's algorithm. And for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this, you can do so by the Super Thanks icon down below or the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. And lastly, Richie DeLuca, who was the captain of the Jersey crew, the same crew that Vicamuso and Gaspipe wanted to completely wipe out years ago. Richie was always at the club up in the Bronx and was very close to the administration. He was also a very good cook and did most of the cooking at the club. Overall, the Lucchese Captains were all different in their own way, some wiser and richer than others. Some got along and some didn't. 4 of the captains mentioned have since passed away, one's in prison, and one was taken down from his position, which would be Big John. And I have to say, I seen that coming from the very first day I met him.